from giving medicine to the human beings, we could here also in this area, since there were no veterinarians, we used to get veterinary patients, cows for deliveries and fractures and some injuries. We used to treat along with human beings, even the animals. So it's a great thing for this team to at least start, somewhere in the rural area. See, the beginning is important, really. How it will take a shape naturally if you are doing it with your um, um, full confidence and dedication. I think more and more rural people will take benefit of this alternative medicine, basically alternative medicine, and it is combined with the modern medicine. That should be the motto. In fact, the only thing is that in rural areas there is a lot of knowledge in the people which is not written. So documentation is important, and second thing is that you should do some research so that you can authentically say that these medicines are effective for such and such diseases. So I offer my best wishes for this venture, and I declare that this rural mobile veterinary hospital is open now.
Thank you so much, Prakashji. This means a lot.
And now we can start with my journey. Actually, it's a long, long journey. Really, we have uh, almost 46 years we have spent in this tribal area. But before that, there is mostly colony. Uh, my father, Baba Amte, is of course well known all over the world for his philanthropic work, and he was a lawyer basically. Then he was inspired by Mahatma Gandhi, took part in freedom fight, and after the independence, he started a leprosarium in Chandrapur district of Maharashtra. It was a turning point in his life. Everybody requires something, but it's a very strange thing. He was going to his house and he saw a leprosy patient lying by the side of the road without any limbs or fingers or nose on his face. A lot of injuries, maggots in his wounds, and he got scared. He had a small blanket on his shoulder. He put that blanket on him and went back to his house. But he was so disturbed. Why he was disturbed? That he said, "Why I was so scared after looking at a helpless man? There was no threat to his life, but still he was scared." And the second thought came to his mind: if my wife and children get leprosy, would I throw them out of my house? So that particular point, he decided to start a leprosarium. And then in 1949, he registered an organization called Maharogi Seva Samiti. Maharogi is leprosy. That time it was called Maha. It's a, it's a curse. So 1949, this institution was registered, and all his family members, parents, everybody were totally opposed. As naturally, he was the son of a landlord. The parents thought that he would look after the land and the property. So everybody, she dedicated her life along with Baba and started with 6 leprosy patients. And we too, Vikas and I, the age was almost 2 and 3 years old. So in 1959, Vinobaji passed through that area, Vinoba Bhave, and he came to know that Baba started leprosarium in the forest. So he came to pay a visit to his ashram. It was a very small, 6 patients and a few huts, and he gave his blessings basically. And he was so pleased that a person like Baba, as the son of a landlord, leaving everything with the inspiration of Gandhi, started this leprosarium. And gradually, of course, leprosy patients came to know about the project, and a lot of patients started getting admitted. And our childhood was really not so nice. It was tremendous isolation. There was no competition. Our only what do you call, friends were all leprosy patients. Not many civilized persons used to visit that place. But gradually, maybe after 8 or 10 years, some of the Gandhians started visiting the project. They appreciated Baba's work. Some journalists came and they wrote about Baba's work. And then people in Maharashtra gradually started appreciating Baba's work. And our education was started in a Marathi medium municipal school where our teachers were only seventh class, seventh standard pass. The primary teacher were seventh standard, vernacular panel. And they used to teach us in Marathi medium. We had no ambition what to do in future. A little bit worry for my mother. These people don't know the ambition, competition, and what will they do afterwards. But when people started appreciating Baba's work, and when we were in matriculation, we both were in same class, and we decided that we will join Baba's work after completion of our education. And fortunately, we got admission in Nagpur Medical College. Baba was a lawyer, so there was a little bit of limitation in doing the work for the leprosy, medical work. So we thought that we would better get little bit knowledge by getting admission in medical college. And fortunately, there was no competition. The tuition fee was so less, though Baba had no money. With his small honorarium, we could complete our education. And people would be, astonished to hear that the tuition fee in 1966 was 175 rupees. 175 rupees. So that's why we both could complete our education. But we were not happy in Nagpur. Rest of our classmates were from the rich families, and other students were from this reservation category. So we were neither of that category, neither of a rich family. So again, the life in Nagpur was more or less isolated. But we passed every exam, first MBBS, second MBBS, and then the final MBBS exam. That was in December 17. After the exam, we came to Anandabad. The result would be out after 15 days. So we had to spend those 15 days in Anandabad. And Baba said, now that you have a holiday, let us go for a picnic. That is how turning point is in my life. Picnic to a place which was not known to anybody, Bhamragarh. It was, at that time, it was Chandrapur district. How did you know? I don't know. How did you know this? You knew that this place. 250 kilometers away from Anandabad. There were no roads. We had a pickup van, about 10 to 12 family members. We packed in that jeep and we started and reached this place on the third day. But the place where we, camped, it was a confluence of three rivers. Bhamragarh, confluence of three rivers on the border of Madhya Pradesh. That time it was Madhya Pradesh. Now it is Chhattisgarh. Right on the border of Chhattisgarh. And beautiful, very thick forest. Confluence of three rivers with clean water. Better than distilleries. No pollution. So we felt very happy. So Baba had brought us for a picnic for a couple of days in a very, very thick forest, closer to nature. And the next day he said, now that since we have come such a long way, let us go and see the area. And took us to the first village. And the vehicle went to the village. There were actually, the roads were fair weather road, we call it. As soon as the vehicle reached the village, the cattle, they ran away. They had never seen the noise of a vehicle or the civilized people for that matter. So they ran away in the forest. Almost everywhere from their villages, adults, children, old people, and young ones, they came out of their huts, and we could see that the fear in their eyes. We felt really surprised how these people, a human being like you and me, are scared after seeing the civilized people, so-called civilized people. So we wanted to have a dialogue with them. We started approaching them, and they almost everybody ran away with the forest. We couldn't have communication with anybody. We went to next village. It's a very thick forest. A village in between, then the forest, then another next village, and the next village. Hundreds of villages in this area. So we could see three, four villages in the whole day, and the experience was same. We couldn't have any communication with anybody, and neither uh, they stayed in the villages to have some dialogue with us. So we came to our camp. It was quite cold. The temperature might be below 10 degrees centigrade. We had all pullovers, sweaters, and shawl on, and the fire was burning. The whole day's impression were in our minds. Nobody was talking about anything. And after a few moments, Baba said, "Now that you both are becoming doctors, you are given a final MBBS exam, and you already decided to take it, the work forward. I think that we should do something for this tribe. Which tribe? This is a Madia tribe, one of the most primitive tribe of India. Uh, I'm not a doctor, so I think I can teach them farming, give them vocational training, make, try to bring them to the main streets, since they live more or less like animals." Suddenly, I realized the intention of his picnic. Next moment, I said, "Baba, if you start this work for this Madia tribe, I will carry on." Baba felt so happy. I could see a joy in his eyes. And that's how that was the turning point. In my life, I was just 22 years old. Next day, we returned back to Anandam. Our results were out. The internship started. Then Baba said, "Now that you have decided to start a work for the tribal area, why don't you send an application to government of Maharashtra to give us a land in this area to start the project, a hospital, a school, or a agriculture extension program, and all these things." So we prepared a big application, sent it to Mumbai, and as bureaucracy works, everybody knows they didn't reply. Our internship was finished. What to do that, since there was no land granted by the government? So I joined post graduation in Wardha, Mahatma Gandhi Medical, Mahatma Gandhi Institute of Medical Science, started by Dr. Sushila Nair. So I started doing post graduation in surgery. The advantage of not getting land, that I could get a partner, life partner, and then government of Maharashtra is responsible for that. If they had given a land very promptly, probably I would have come here and remained bachelor till now. A place which was so cut off from the world. So naturally, any parent would not have sent his daughter to this place to work for this tribal. Anyway, Mandakini Deshpande from Nagpur, she came for post graduation in anesthesia. Though we were in the same class, she was senior to me. We didn't know each other for the last 5.5 years. But after joining post graduation, working on the same patient, we get to know each other, and somehow the wavelength matched probably. I told her that I'm going to start work in this tribal area after government gives us lands. And she agreed probably, and the news, my elder brother was also there. He sent a news to Baba and my mother that some affair is going on with this with your younger son. My mother was worried. They called us to Anandvan. Mandakini visited Anandvan for the first time. She saw the Anandvan, and then Baba said that Prakash is going to start work for the tribal in the Bhamragar region. Do you know that? She said, he told me, then I gave him my word. Baba was a practical person. He said, immediately you get married now. Though our education was not completed, he said, uh, my mother said, the wedding of the elder son should be first. I mean, she was a traditional woman. But somehow Baba said, no, since they have decided to get married, we got married in 1972. And next day after the marriage, since we had no money to go for a honeymoon, I said, we take a vehicle and I will show you the area where we are going to work. So 2 days after our wedding, we reached this place. And when the first time she saw that this, how difficult the area, in monsoon there will be no road for 6 months, thick forest, very thick forest. No civilized person living in this area. All tribals, almost just having loincloths without clothes. But she realized the challenge. And then in 73 December, Baba got the land. Land got near Bhamragarh and is near the village where we are staying. It was Hemalkasa. He named it as Lok Biradari Prakal. The meaning actually is People's Brotherhood Project. And I was doing MS General Surgery in Nagpur at the time. I came to know that Baba got the position. I left my education in the middle and uh, came here and joined the project. Constructed one small hut. Probably you can show the photograph of the hut. That was the beginning of Hemalkasa. Uh, because there was this 50-acre land was given by the. This is the first hut where we started this project. There were another huts for the clinic and for the volunteers, but this was the first one, a thatched one, without electricity, without water, without toilet. We had a small stream running by the side of our project. Used to go for a bath. Had trench latrines. Used to have dig a small trench and then this is covered with the soil. So this was a totally new experience for Mandakini. She was a city girl basically. In Nagpur, both the parents were teachers and they had a philosophy. And, basically, all they were members of RSS in Nagpur. And naturally, they were against the wedding. When they started, when she said, I'm going to work for the tribal in Baba's project. First, their objection was to go into a leprosy project. And secondly, when they realized that the place which they have chosen, where you cannot go there because there was no road, no telephone. So there was a resistance from them, but somehow Mandakini convinced them, and that's how we got married. Uh, with Baba's inspiration, we could get few more volunteers. About 6 volunteers we came here. They were from cities. They were living in another hut. We had a common kitchen, but nothing much to eat except rice and dal. Because only those things which we could store in a temporary godown. Since monsoon started on 15th of June till December, it was totally cut off from the world. Neither any vehicle would come, neither any civilized person could come to this place. So we had to store it before monsoon. Mandakini took charge of a kitchen, which they had never had a common kitchen before that. Usually you have your own private kitchen, uh, parents and children, that's all. Lot of choices about preparing the food. Here, only rice and dal. Dal was the staple food. We also had to store potatoes and onions because they would stay for a longer time. So she used to have her own choice. Sometimes vegetable of onion, sometimes vegetable of potato, sometimes mixed vegetable. But dal and rice was a staple food. And the, the, the volunteers coming from the city, it's a totally new experience for them. I had little bit of experience with staying with Baba and Tai because it was also a forest place. I had a community kitchen there. So it was not much difficult for me, but for all these volunteers coming from outside. But they had never complained. We used to sit after the dinner by the side of fire, have a chat for a few minutes. And purposely, I used to tell them that we have come here to serve this tribe, this Madia tribe. And what they have, food to eat. They have tremendous forest here. Whatever is available in the forest, they used to eat them. tubers, roots, fruits, and animals, birds, snakes sometimes, anything that moves. But since ages they were living like this, the number of animals and the birds had come down. So there was problem of malnutrition. But to keep our morale up, we always used to say, what a luxury we have. We have enough of rice, enough of dal. Sometimes we use vegetables of potato and but the people for whom we came here, they go to the forest, collect red ants, kill some animals, birds, and if they don't get anything, they starve. They will go next day. So as compared to their life, we are really leading a luxurious life. So why to complain? So this way we used to have our dialogue in front of a fire, and nobody complained. Actually, there was no frustration. Everybody realized that it was a fact that they were starving, and on the other hand, we had a sufficient food to eat. So next problem was, what was the tribal's problem? How they live? How could they live in such a difficult area? So we used started roaming from village to village, and people used to run away since they had never seen civilized people working for them. So that was really testing time, testing our patience, testing our frustrating. We had left everything, and for whom we came, they didn't respond. So the main problem was language. They had a dialect, Madia, few words only, but it's totally different from Marathi and Hindi. So we learned the language, tried to communicate with their own. We studied their culture, their, their customs, and we realized that whenever the person is sick in the village, they used to take them to the village priest, pujari they call here. He used to ask for a mawa liquor and sacrifice of a chicken. Sometimes they used to ask for a human sacrifice. And when we came to know that this custom is there still in this um, area after the independence, it was really slightly depressing. How to change them? How to educate them? After some time, we realized that the pujari could not cure every patient. Those patients who had minor illnesses used to go to him, and with their own immunity probably they used to get cured, but the credit used to go to him. But those who were really serious, he said down that I have done my duties, I have tried everything. He's not going to recover now. You take him back, and now this God will decide whether he will survive or not. So we thought that we would ask such patients who were sent back by the local choir, and I will tell you the two cases which have changed uh, our life in this area. Basically, the first patient was from Hemalkasa village. He had epilepsy. They used to sleep by the side of fire. It was too cold. During the attack of epilepsy, he fell down in a fire and there was 40% burn. 10 nearby, 40% burn. They took him to the pujari and he treated with his own medicine and mantra tantra. Wound got unfortunately infected and there were maggots in his wound. He was so helpless, crying all the day. And then he said, "Now you take him back. I couldn't do anything now." By moving in the village, we could see that boy helplessly lying outside his village, outside his hut. It was smelling awfully, so he was not inside. We requested his parents, "Why don't you bring this boy to our clinic?" And since they had lost the hopes, they readily agreed, brought him to our cottage hospital. It's a small cottage like this. And we were happy that we got a patient ultimately. We removed the maggots with the faucet, put eucalyptus, it's repellents. So more maggots came out, gave him antibiotic, basically penicillin, gave some medicine for his epileptic fits, and within few days he got all right. This was a virgin area and had never taken any medicine, so he responded quickly. We adapted him. We learned more language from him. We used to take him to different villages, and more patients started coming. That's how the beginning of Hemel. The second patient again was a dramatic, second serious patient. I mean, uh, he was serious according to them. He was in coma. Their village priests had treated him with their own medicine. He didn't recover. So they had heard about Hemalkasa project. Young boys and from the villages put him on a cot, and they carried him on the shoulder 30 kilometers in a procession by changing the shoulders. A young patient, two persons cannot bring. So 10 to 12 young boys from the villages brought him here. We were again happy that such a serious patient was brought from such a long distance, 30 kilometers. The relatives stayed with the patient, rest of them went back. And next moment we were so depressed, since we had no investigation facilities, we didn't know much of their language, how to diagnose. It was really challenging. Yes, was difficulty. We referred to books, and finally we both decided probably this is a cerebral malaria, uh, which is a serious, but it was not confirmed. It was a probable diagnosis. So we both said we'll start with anti-malarials, intravenous quinine, and glucose, and some of the life-saving drugs we had brought here. And we was watching him, attending him for day and night, 24 hours to care for him. And the third day, my colleague came running to me that how he is now responding. He is moving his limbs. He has opened his eyes. He's trying to talk. And then we felt so happy that probably our diagnosis was correct and is responding to the treatment. And on the fifth day, he got all right. He carried the same cord and who was about to die was taken to Himalkasa hospital, and he was carried his own cot walking back. More patients started. More patients started means they came from 150 kilometers. This is a very big forest area, almost 400,000 tribal living in Maharashtra and Chhattisgarh, Bastar area. Uh, the main problem for us was investigation. No electricity, no laboratories, everything was clinical. But fortunately, fortunately for us, our diagnosis in most of the cases uh, was correct. Patients started responding, and more patients started coming. Uh, Malaria was rampant in the area, sickle cell anemia, snake bite, lot of bears in the area, so cases of bear bites, malnutrition, lack of immunity, so lot of cases of pneumonia. So we started treating everything. We never said no to anything. Since I had left my post-graduation in surgery, Manda was anesthetist, the patient came for everything. They came for the deliveries, complicated deliveries. They came for fractures. They came for eye problems. I will tell you one case of a bear bite. He had gone to the forest to collect some food, and bear attacked him. His whole scalp was hanging back, and his eyes were punctured. The villagers brought him to the village and then put him on a cot, bamboo cot, and they carried him 60 kilometers on foot and brought the patient to my hospital. And we had never seen such a case in Nagpur Medical College. There was no scalp. The skull was bare open. The eye sockets. There was no eyeball in it. And he was talking his language. and 48 hours had passed. I was scared, how will he survive? We washed his wound, a lot of leaves and mud in his wound, washed his body, it was full of blood, clotted blood. And then it looked a little bit better. So I pulled the skin and put it on his scalp back, like you put the cap. And I said the scalp was intact. Nothing was taken away by the bear. But to keep it intact, we should give them stitches. The travelers had never heard of stitches or something like or anesthesia for that matter. We are not nothing much of our instruments or equipment here. I told him in his language that we have to stitch the wound. Started boiling the cotton thread and the needle on the fire. After the sterilization, gave him first stitch, and he didn't utter a word. What a tolerance! I don't know. Tremendous tolerance. Though he was conscious, but he couldn't see the procedure because he was blind. The eyes were punctured. So I started giving stitches one after another, almost without anesthesia. And after 100 stitches, he just casually asked, "How many more are remaining?" So by the time I had finished the stitching of the wound, I said, "Yeah, it's almost finishing." And 100 stitches without anesthesia, without complaint. You can imagine the tolerance of a patient. And with penicillin, antibiotic, and all these things, he became all right. So on the 10th day, we went back walking, holding a hand of a relative, 60 kilometers back. After a year, some more patients came from that village. Out of curiosity, I asked them, "How is that patient of a bear bite who was treated here last year?" And they said he was all right till few days, but he died recently. How did he die? He should have died in that severe attack. But his life was saved, and how did he die today? They said because since he was blind, he couldn't go to the forest to collect his own food. So gradually, survival of the fittest, he couldn't get a share of food. Neither he could go to the forest to collect his food. So he became so malnourished. So it was really a hunger death. Basically, he died of hunger. And it was really shocking for me. And then I realized there must be quite a few cases of cataract in the area. Ophthalmologists would never come here. Neither these patients would go to city for operation. So they also must be dying of starvation. As long as they could see something, they could go to the forest, collect some fruits, and once they become blind, they are eliminated. So, so I said, we discussed with Mandakini, why can't we do a cataract surgery in this area? So we bought the books, we got the instruments, studied it, uh, and prepared one lady. She was completely blind. Both eyes had cataract. And we made one room, sterilized it. Two of my volunteers, they were showing me torch light. One was wiping my perspiration. So whole team was there to perform the surgery with a good intention basically. We had great tension, anxiousness about the, the, the result of the operation. We finished the operation, dressed her. Next day, everybody again gathered, removed the dressing. Everybody was anxious to see what was the result of the operation. And the eyes were clear, there was no bleeding, no infection, and she could see. When we realized that she could see now, everybody was so happy. And after the 10th day, we gave him plus 10 specs so that she could see clearly. She went back walking. You can imagine a lady with just a loincloth wearing a spec. Again, a lot of people came to know that now they can the cure of a cataract blindness in this house. So many patients started coming. This way we never said no to anybody. We treated every type of patients. Sending in a city was impossible since there was no road, no vehicles around. They had no clothes to wear. Money was out of question and a language, so it was impossible. So we tried to help them in every way, whether to at least reduce their agonies. And after 2 years, when they realized that these young volunteers are living like more or less like us, living in a huts, not much of clothes on their body. Uh, so they call us Bhau and Vaini, I mean brother and sister-in-law. So they accepted us totally, and they started telling us other problems, non-medical problems. What were their problems? Some of the officers and contractors used to call them for our employment guarantee school scheme. Maharashtra was pioneering it. So these tribals were called forcibly to work for them. In the evening, they used to take the commutation and didn't give them a single pie. So most of the villagers came here in a group. I started telling them that we worked for a month for this department, for the contractors. They never paid us, just took our some impression. We were really shocked, these officers and the contractors had tremendous money with them. And the persons who were working for them had malnutrition, no clothes to wear. So simple tribe. How dare you can exploit them? So we complained to collector of the district and the conservator. And fortunately, they took the action, and the officer was suspended. But we all volunteers, my colleagues, decided to start a school for them, make them aware about these rights, teach them some farming. So in 76 June, my colleagues went to the villages to convince the tribal people to bring them to send their children to the project for school. They had never heard of a residential school before that, so they were against it. Our volunteers asked them, "You were not coming to the hospital when we came here in the beginning. Now you come in thousands. So why don't you give us a chance? Give us a chance. If you don't like it, if your children don't like the education, you can send them, take them back." So they sent 25 students. That was the first beginning of the school. Uh, our teachers were really highly educated. They taught them in their own language because by the time they learned their Madia dialect, because they didn't know Marathi or Hindi. So they started teaching them in their own language. They started teaching them farming. They started teaching them about their rights. And they stay with our family, having had a good food, the hospital, everything was nice. But still, some of the boys didn't like the disciplined life. Almost 10 students, they didn't come after the vacation. But those 15 students who stayed here for a whole year, they liked the education, they liked the life. They went with our volunteers to different villages. And next year, the strength went up to 30 students. Only 5 were the dropouts. And after 2 years, parents started bringing their children. And there's a lot of awareness about the education. We started with health, because we both were doctors. There were no other plans. I always tell this project was expanded without any planning, without any vision that way. Uh, but according to the need of people. Started with clinic, then community health, and then the school, then about their rights, teaching about their rights, agriculture extension, teaching them farming, horticulture, and this is how the number of students started increasing in the school. The good thing about the education that the three, we had a school up to 7th standard because it was not recognized. But after the 7th standard, we sent those 3 students. Rest went back to the villages, to Anandvan, where they had a school and college. So those 3 students, they passed their 12th exam, 10 plus 2. First one said, I have enough education. Now I go back to my area. He joined forest department as forest guard. Second one said, I want to do the diploma in education. So he completed his education and came here as a teacher in the same district. And the third one said, I want to go to a medical college and complete my education as a doctor. So he went to the same college where we had our education. We were so happy that one of the tribal, a primitive tribe, they had no education. The parents were living on loin cloth, had not sufficient food to eat. Got admission in Nagpur Medical College, and he passed MBBS exam. We were so happy that he could at least complete one milestone. We went to congratulate him. He said that how I want to do the post graduation. So he got admission in gynecology and obstetrics, and he became obstetrician. After completing his post graduation, he took some experience in Nagpur Medical College, and he came back in Gadchiroli district and joined the government hospital in a rural area. And he's a he's like a Deepa Stamba, all these people, first doctor in amongst the tribe. So everybody in the area knew that yeah, a boy from our area is highly educated. I mean, more educated than both of us. He was MD obstetric and gynec, and there was tremendous education about awareness about education. And now our school has 650 students. Almost half of them are girls. More than 10 students have become doctors. Some of them have become lawyers, engineers. Most of them have become teachers, nurses. The beauty of this, these people, these students are that more than 80% of the students, after completion their education in the cities, have come back in Gadchiroli district and serving their own tribe. The problem of our children's education, my son Digant, Aniket, and Arti, there was no problem. We admitted them in the same school with the tribal students, but the problem came afterwards. They didn't know about the competition. They couldn't get admission in medical college because they have studied with this tribal where there was no competition at all. But somehow society helped us. One of the private medical college in Varda, Datta Mege, gave him free seat and he became medical graduate. He passed out medical MBBS and he came for a holiday here after the exam. My father was here. He by the time he became doctor, my father had already gone to Narmada Bachao Andolan. He was helping Medha Patkar in Madhya Pradesh. But in 1998, we had a small get together since we had completed 25 years. My son also had come, and he said to my father, Baba, that since now I am completing my education, graduation, I want to join my mother and father's work. Baba was really overwhelmed. There were tears in his eyes. The third generation voluntarily decided to join this work. But he said you should tell this your decision in a public meeting. He was a man of older generation. Public commitment should be, uh, um, the older generation thought that if you commit publicly, you should carry on uh, whatever commitment you have said to the public. So in the evening, he told the meeting that I almost completed my education. I given my final MBBS examination. After completion of internship, I will come and join Lok Graduate Faculty. The whole meeting was overwhelmed. Everybody was so happy. So that's how elder son came back and started working with me as a doctor. Younger one again had a problem, Aniket. Uh, so he went to Pune. He did diploma in mechanical engineering, and he also, of his own, he decided to come and join the project in 2006. So both the sons had come here. Uh, my elder son said, "I want a partner." He had no love marriage during his medical career. So he asked his mother to find a partner for him, preferably a medical graduate. Because living in the forest, if you have another hand, they can discuss various things as his mother and father was doing. So my father gave an advertisement in a marriage bureau, but nobody wanted to come to Hemalkasa. Still a remote area with another problem in the area. Insurgency was there. So for 2 years, she wrote a lot of letters to the parents of her bridegroom. Nobody was willing to come here. But one fine morning, there was a phone call from Goa, and the mother said that my daughter has read the profile and she is ready to get married to your son. But we were not excited. Goa was 1200 kilometers away from this place. That she had never seen Emalkasa or Baba's project. How can they get married? By just looking at the profile. So our friend suggested that they should meet in Pune. So uh, we sent our son to Pune. She came from Goa and they both met in Pune and decided to get married in 24 hours. And in 2003, they got married. She came here as my daughter-in-law. But more than that, she is our daughter. We were so fortunate enough that she is not only MBBS, but she is a gynecologist. I just forgot to tell you one incident that since we were not gynecologists, sometimes when there was a problem in delivery, a baby is transfers or the head is very big, we had to do a hysterectomy surgery. And it was sort of a guilt, where we couldn't send them to Nagpur or Chandrapur to get them cesarean surgery or any other help because there were no roads and no transport. But we could just save the life of her mother so she could get another chance. But after 2003, I'm so happy that if a case of complicated delivery comes here, my wife Mandakini gives anesthesia, and my daughter-in-law Anaga, she performs cesarean surgery, and uh, both the lives are saved. And after a few years, we saw that they are so competent to handle the hospital. They are completely looking after the hospital now. They have constructed a 50-bedded new hospital with almost more facilities because the electricity came after 22 years. Now they can have all the equipment, lab, and it's a beautiful hospital they have constructed in still a remote area, 50-bedded hospital. Almost many facilities are there. And many young doctors are joining them. So we are so happy that we could transfer the responsibility to the able uh, hands. And Aniket, who came back as an engineer, has taken over the charge of the school. Uh, his wife is Samiksha. She's from Pune. She's a MA Economics, and they had she came here as a visitor, and they had a love marriage in 2008. Since 2008, both of them had taken responsibility of a school, residential schools. More than 600 boys and girls are studying in this school. And gradually they have taken complete responsibility of the school. And there is tremendous awareness about education. So they have started two more schools on the demand of our local tribal. Uh, a place called Nelgunda, 25 kilometers away from this place. It's still a remote place, no roads, no electricity. But the parents came to them and they requested them to start a school there. And in 2000, 5 years back, they started a school in the name of my mother, Sadhana School. Uh, they made a little change. My daughter-in-law is from Pune and she studied in English medium. We had a lot of difficulty in teaching them Marathi because it's a foreign language to this Madhya tribe. But after 2 years, they learn this Marathi and Hindi, and then they can become a doctor or engineer or other things. So my daughter-in-law thought that we will teach them in English. That is also a foreign language, And the result was that they picked up English very easily. The school there had 56 students on the first year. There was no building. The villager had given them 1 acre land, started underneath the school, under the tree. And now there are almost 140 students. This is the fifth year. Another school was started in a village called Jinsgaon. The villager said, now that you have started a school there, why can't we have the same facility in our school? So second school started last year. And there are about 50 students. So this is how the project started with a small clinic in a small hut or underneath a tree. The clinic started, then expanded to school and agriculture extension and awareness about their rights, vocational training. We used to give them vocational training, bamboo craft, tailoring, and finally about the animals. Uh, that is a totally different uh, world for me. There was no planning of having an animal orphanage, but as you said, that the first animal was a monkey whose mother and father were killed by them. Uh, Luckily, we saw the hunting party with a live baby suckling the dead mother, and we stopped them, requested them to give that baby to. They said our children are hungry in the villages. What will they eat? And the idea struck me. I said we will give them rice and dal. You can feed them with the rice, and that is how the first animal, a barter system, first animal came to my heart. She became friend of my dog, and he used to sit on his back, follow us everywhere. And then patient came to hospital, used to see that they are usually their enemies. Dogs usually run after the monkeys and kill them, but here it was totally reverse. The monkeys used to sit on his back, and we requested the patients, if you find any orphan animal in this forest, you can bring them, and we will get food in exchange of that. And the next animal was a deer fawn, and then the bear cub and the leopard and whatnot. I mean, all these orphans started coming from the tribal, but they were living in my family as a family members. All these different kind of animals. You can imagine. At one time, I had two country dogs, a leopard, a bear, a wild buffalo, a monkey. As I we used to come for a walk up to the confluence. We used to go for a walk every day, morning and evening. All these family members used to follow us there. But when we started a school, small children started getting coming to the hospital and the school. We had to put them in the cages. But the relationship is same. I still call them my member of my family, irrespective of any animal, whether it's a poisonous snake or a hyena or a lion or a leopard, bear, all animals, all these things. In fact, uh, if people ask me, whom do you believe more? So I always tell them I believe more on four-legged and legless animals rather than two-legged animals. Because it's a long experience with both the community. So this is very satisfying living with such members, which people call them unpredictable, cruel, treacherous, not a one incidence that they have threatened me. And I never felt a threat from them. I never trained them. I never, like you used to see them in circus, just with love. All these animals, they became really members of my family, like my sons and my grandsons. There are almost more than 100 animals in my family, all kinds of deers, uh, three, four leopards, hyena, bear, porcupines, poisonous snakes. People used to kill them before we came into this area because a lot of cases of snake bites. Since there was no anti-venom, a lot of deaths due to snake bites. So we started catching snakes, educating them. The school children also. Don't kill the snakes. If there is a snake bite, bring the patient immediately to the hospital. We have snake bites. We have anti-snake venom for them. So gradually the hunting of the snakes has become less. A lot of children have become aware of the varieties of snakes. My grandson, Arnav, the first grandson, is almost obsessed with snakes. He knows snakes of the world. He teaches students about the uh, different varieties of the snake, which are the venomous ones, which are non-venomous. So this way, the killing of snake has become almost reduced now. If there is a snake found in the area, either some of our colleagues they catch them and send them back to the nature in a remote area. We have few snakes for the education in our orphanage. Uh, Sally Walker, who was an American lady, she came to visit this place in '89. When she saw these different animals living very happily together, she gave the name. This is why call. Why do you call them a zoo or orphanage or other names? It's an animal art. The story goes long back in the Bible, um, where Noah's Ark is a story. When there was probably a destruction of a world, all these animals she took on a one ship, and after that, a regeneration of the world. That's how the story in the Bible. But here, all these animals, bear, leopard, lion, dogs, living together happily, same environment, same place, without attacking anybody. So she gave the name Amte's Animal Ark. It's a very good name. It's a poetic one. It is actually great satisfaction for me and my family that we came for serving the poor tribal integrated development. But almost 50% of my life is almost engaged with other other members of this the family, and it's really satisfying life we led. We are now totally retired from the active life here because both the sons and daughter-in-law have taken the charge, and they are competently looking after the project. Third generation of Amtes completely involved. The technology has come now, and they are utilizing the same. In our time, of course, there was no electricity, so very few things here, uh, equipment-wise or instruments. But after the electricity arrived after 22 years, now the internet is there, Facebook and other things. So the young generation is taking full advantage of technology and is well connected with the world. Um, we both led very satisfying life. For 30 years, we have not gone to uh, address a public meeting. The first public meeting, one of our friends, Jagannath Vani, was Canada, forced us to go to America to address the Marathi people there in their convention. That was in 2003. That's our first public meeting was in US after 30 years, and then gradually people in India came to know that Baba's son, younger son, is working for the tribal with his wife and children and the volunteers, and more invitations started coming, and more came after the awards, and then the film released in 2014, and Maharashtra almost everybody knows about Lok Biradari Triple, and a lot of invitation from the youngsters basically. We are so happy that though we don't like to to address people or give presentation because we don't want to. I mean, that's our nature basically. Both our uh, don't like by our to 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 advise people. Basically, we did the work silently, more or less, keeping our needs to bare minimum and led very satisfying. We are not repenting anything. The tribals gave us a lot of love. It's a very simple community, innocent community, and selfless work. The joy of working with them was tremendous. Third generation has taken over. There's again another point of joy. The grandsons are here with me. They are also taking their education with the same tribal school. in Marathi medium. A great compromise on the part of my daughter-in-laws. They are both from cities, studied in English medium, but their children are in the same school studying in Marathi medium. What will happen afterwards, God knows, if he is there. But that's how the project is, running with great satisfaction. We have led our life 47 years now in this remote area, leading very satisfying and happy life. That's all. Thank you very much for giving us chance to interact with you.
Thank you so much, Prakashji. I think all the bird sounds in the background is also adding a lot of life to everything that you've
Yeah.
been speaking so far.
Mhm.
So we have uh,
Yeah.
a few questions that the participants have asked. So maybe we could go into that.
Can you see me? I mean,
Yes, yes.
it has become dark because the electricity, the power is, there's a power failure now.
Okay, no, we're able to
Can you,
see you.
yeah, it's become very dark because of the cloudy. Anyway, yeah.
Right. um, can you tell us a little bit about the meeting of Baba Amte with Vinoba Bhave and starting of the Maharogi Seva Samiti? How did he get over the stigma to be surrounded by leprosy patients?
Uh, as I told you, the turning point is life. And since he was not a doctor, and he knew Vinoba Bhave because he used to live in Pavnar, near Varda, Sevagram and all these things. So when he decided to start work for leprosy patient, he went to Vinobaji, and then Vinobaji said, "You should know minimum basic thing about leprosy." So there is a school of Calcutta, tropical medicine in Calcutta, where Dr. Dharmendra was a leprologist there, and he also knew Vinobaji. So Vinobaji talked to him, and both of them recommended the college about Baba's name to give him training in Calcutta School of Tropical Medicine for 6 months. So in 1949, he went there, took the training about leprosy, uh, and came back and started uh, in Anandvan. And then he was on Padayatra. Bhutan, you must be knowing that Bhutan Padayatra. Uh-huh. So, so he was passing through that road, and he came to know that Baba's project is so near from the road. So he came, specifically came to meet and appreciate Baba's work. That time Baba was also staying in a small hut with 6 leprosy patients. And he gave his blessings basically. What he said actually, it was in Marathi. Ramayana, Ramayana. So he said, बाबा आपके ये प्रोजेक्ट में सेवा का रामायण लिखा जाएगा. सेवा का रामायण. He said in Marathi, सेवा का रामायण. सेवा is service. Was living in a forest, so and that's how he went back for the Bhudan movement after 14 years while returning back to Pavnar. See, again, he came by the time Anandvan was very well known, 14 years, in 1964. Even Baba started college for the healthy students. So he remembered that Baba, I said that, यहाँ सेवा का रामायण लिखा जाएगा. I could see everything, great achievement, Baba, you did that. That's how, Baba's got blessing from, inspiration from Gandhi and blessing from Vinobaji.
Can you speak a little bit about the annual event of Sham Sanskar Shravani?
Actually, Baba's other project, that is in Somnath, again in Chandrapur district. He wanted to have a project for the youth. So government of Maharashtra gave him land in 1967. And there was a small Shrama Sanskar Shibir. That was the first, the camp was in 1967. But in 1968, uh, he had a lot of friends all over India. And he really advertised very well. And 1400 students from all over India, they came to Somnath. Somnath was not developed that time. There were small tin sheds and huts and a big forest. So, and the camp was organized in the month of May, where there was maximum heat in Chandrapur district. This time also it was 47 degrees. May is, yeah, is very hottest month. And because he said the month is so suitable for the students because they don't have exam that time. Most of the students' exams were finished. And every day he used to call some dignitaries, to address them. Apart from labor in the morning, work with the leprosy patient. Digging of a lake or construction of a barn, they should actually do the work, physical labor. In the afternoon, in 45 degrees, used to have different sessions from dignitaries from all over, like S.M. Joshi, like Tukroji Maharaj, Mohan Daria came. Different Baba's friends started coming and inspiring those youths. So from 68 till 2000, say 19, the activity is still going on. Many students have participated in that. And most of the NGOs we started in Maharashtra and outside, somehow they had come to Somnath. The connection was there and taken inspiration from Baba's work. So thousands of youths have taken inspiration from Baba's work from the Shrama Sanskar Shibir. And that is why it's important. This year, of course, because of the corona, we couldn't have that Shibir.
Someone has asked, how did you overcome any feelings of fear that you might have had while providing shelter to wild animals? Many veterinarians are fearful to treat even dogs nowadays.
Let's repeat the question.
How did you overcome your fear or feelings of fear?
It was not there. Because basically these animals were often, they're so small. And when you treat them as as children, they understand, how you behave, your behavior with them, not there. If you don't have palpitation, they understand. Actually, fear means you have you secrete probably some hormones or something, and then they realize that he is not actually uh, loving the animal. You must be seeing some of them phobias about dogs. Dogs also realize that this man is not dog friendly, so they don't go near them either, or they try to attack him. So here, of course, living in the forest right from our childhood, fortunately, there was no fear for the animals in my heart. And they realized gradually, and they were living in the family. So other people who were not used to these animals, and they realized that they are so friendly, became member of family. So the fear of everybody, it went away.
Has the definition of social changed from your time to from your father's time? Because there are a lot of NGOs now that are sprouting up. So, how would you define social work?
Please repeat again. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So, has the definition of social work changed over time, like from your father's time to your time and how it is now? Because a lot of NGOs are sprouting up. So, how would you define social work?
The style of Baba's working was, he started his institution as a family. He was the head of the family. And the second thing was that most of the people say that work for the people, but his motto was work with the people. Where he wanted to start a new work, he was the first person to have a crowbar in his hand, or so. In every new activity, he was the first man. So naturally, the leprosy patient, the physical handicap used to, you know, uh, follow his footsteps. Work with the patient, not for the for the people. That's how his motto. And those were the sanskar on us. Both of us, we came here. We also started this project as a family. We can run the project either as a corporate way, or it's a big family, basically family of 1,000 people, 650 students and staff, hospital staff, and the animals more than 100. So basically decentralization. Yeah. So every volunteer feels that this is their own project. No, no. So administration is easier that way. That's how actually as you say, a lot of NGOs are coming up, but I don't know which way, how they run the institution or NGOs. Uh, but the way we followed, we never went for the publicity now. That's because of our nature. We're just doing it silently. We were happy that with our efforts, the people in this area for whom we came are benefited. What more you want? That was a great satisfaction for both of us and our volunteers. Publicity came later on, of course. Now it's important that because of the publicity, a lot of youngsters get inspired. A lot of invitation from different colleges. Even I was there in Chennai, IIT Chennai last year. They had invited us. There's a lot of invitation from different colleges, medical colleges. And I told you, basically, I don't like to advise, but at least I could share my experiences. If they ask questions, I believe in dialogue, so I can answer them. So that way, I don't tell people to do this thing or that.
Actually, can you move your laptop a little back and maybe lower the screen a little? We're not able to see. Your face is getting cut. So
Okay.
yes, it's a little better. Your face is still getting cut. Little. It needs to come a little lower. If you could move the screen down. Yes, this is much better. Yeah. Yes. Okay.
Ah.
Giving the less fortunate people a chance and not just charity. Can you speak a little bit about this?
You know, uh, compassion, that everybody should have a compassion. And Baba also had read Bible, Quran, and all these things. He was a very voracious reader. He knew. Um, because of compassion, he started work for the leprosy and then added everything. Yeah, less fortunate, everything, or differently able. You can see everybody in Anandvan. The second thing about Baba's, difference between compassion, I mean Christian compassion. Mother Teresa's work is a great work. But here Baba's work, he added confidence in those so-called differently able people. Tremendous confidence who were begging in front of churches and temples because they had deformities or loss of limbs and all this. But when they came to Anandvan, Baba asked everybody to do their according to their efficiency. Everybody should work. Giving food is all right, food and clothing and all this. But the self confidence in leprosy patient, and later on blind people and the physically handicapped. So that is basically his major contribution He's a pioneer. Once he said, let them lose their limbs. In leprosy, there is anesthesia of the limbs. So if they work, there is a possibility of getting injured because of the anesthesia. But the creation, the confidence that they would get. So it was a little bit controversial sentence. Huh? Let them lose their limbs, but not the self-confidence. So that's how he could infuse confidence in everybody. And that was the importance of his work. Creativity, basically creativity.
Your 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 face is getting cut again, Prakashji. Like not able to see half of it. Can you shift your screen a little down? I think it should. Mm, now we're not able to see you. Yeah, this is much better. Yeah, thank you. Mm, Human beings consider themselves the most superior species on Earth. We think we can conquer the world and nature, and we have come a long way in destruction of nature in such a short time. Taking into account that humans are the only species who kill their own species for their own gain, do you agree that human species are the most superior in the planet?
I'm 100%. I mean, the destruction of nature, basically. Most of the problems you start, the recent problem is corona. But before that, you see heavy rains, cyclones, forest fires, a lot of pollution, pollution of the rivers, air pollution. It is because of destruction of basically nature. Mahatma Gandhi said, and Baba rightly said, greed and need. You should take only what you need to lead a normal life. But for a greed, there is no end to it. Right up to, yeah, nobody will be satisfied if you have a greed. So this is a great lesson by Corona. If you want to live, you must curtail your needs. Yeah. The life of enjoyment should be changed. And that nature has given you a warning. If you are not going to realize after Corona is over, probably there will be more severe, another outbreak of another virus probably. So this is the time to realize and change our lifestyle.
Can you tell us a little bit about the marriage of Baba Amte and Sadhna Tai in 1946?
Yeah, that was a love marriage, first love marriage in Amte family. Baba Amte, after the not after the independence, but he took part in independence and decided to remain bachelor. So, so he had grown up beard and all these things. He used to wear dhoti, khadi, and khadi kurta and khadi dhoti and all these things. But somehow my mother's family were distant relatives of Amtes. So he knew them. So my grandmother, who lost her husband because of diabetes, had six daughters and two sons. So after the death of her husband, she decided to get married her daughters as soon as possible. So first three elder sisters got married. My mother Sadhna Tai was the fourth one. Baba used to go there once in a while, so he went there. So my grandmother asked him, now I want to get my fourth daughter get married. Please find some suitable bride for him, bridegroom. And Baba went back. After a couple of days, he came back to her house and said, I have found a bridegroom. He said, who is he? He said, he's standing in front of you. So she was so surprised. A man who was to remain bachelor, but somehow that time, of course, my mother and father had no dialogue as such. But the way she was working in the house, she was helping uh, the maid and all these things. So Baba realized that she's a different quality she had. And by the time probably they had silent love affair. When he offered his as a bridegroom, the mother felt very, my grandmother felt very happy, and then they wanted to have their wedding. Unfortunately, before wedding, he was attacked by some some probably robbers had come to their house, to my grandmother's house. He was sleeping on a top floor. He, he's, he saw two persons moving in the dark, and he asked them, "Who are you?" Those two person realized that he is awake. They had big knives in their hand, and they stabbed him in the shoulders. Fortunately, not in the heart, but in the shoulder, and then ran away. So everybody wake up. He was admitted in a Mayo hospital in Nagpur, and wedding was after 8 days. So with the bandage on, they got married in 18th of December 1946. As it is, Baba had told her that she is leading to live a different life. That time it was not decided to work for the leprosy patient. But his mother agreed, of course. And they came to Aurora. And he was a lawyer there. He was vice president of municipal council. And that time that incident happened, that he saw a leprosy patient and later on. But my mother was total dedication. She had no other second thought when Baba said, do this thing or that thing. She used to follow. That's how the first love marriage in Amte family. Totally two different nature characters. Baba was a practical man, not believing in God, and she was totally religious. He used to worship all gods and Sai Baba and not everything. Baba used to believe in his own karma, not in karma kanda, but never opposed her feelings. Yeah.
What is the one thing to be remembered when working with people?
Don't expect anything from them. It is for your satisfaction you are doing the work. So that gives you quite a liberty of enjoying the more or less selfless. Yeah, we are enjoying selfless work here.
So, when a daughter-in-law, Anagha Amte, was introduced to the tribals first, how did it feel to pass on the baton after working for so many decades?
How do?
How did it feel to pass on like the work to her, like after working for decades?
Actually, instantly she got mixed in this area. You know, I don't. It's really rare phenomena. She is from Goa. She is from Goa Medical College, and somehow the wavelength matched with my son. And even the wedding was performed in Anandvan because Baba was sick. After the wedding, she she came over and then she started working with us, and gradually both of them had taken over the responsibility. And once in a year they go to Goa. It's far away. His father and brother and sister-in-law both, all the three are architects in Goa. She is the only doctor in the family. Somehow we are fortunate enough to have her here. She came voluntarily. She came here. Thousands of patients are in the area from Maharashtra, Chhattisgarh, and even Telangana. They come to the hospital for different ailments. She started few sub-centers in the interiors. The minor illnesses can be treated by a local private doctor. Basically, barefoot doctors we call them. So it's quite inspiring for all young generation there. The girl from a city voluntarily decides to come and get settled in this remote area.
How do we instill wonder and sensitivity about wildlife, especially in children?
Unfortunately, I mean, I don't know how far you will agree. Uh, in our nation, we lack compassion about animals. They go after the dog. They will, hit him for no reason. Many of these young generation. We've seen in Western countries, they purposely, send their children to the zoos, allow them to handle the animals, like harmless animals, like rabbits or guinea pigs, or just to have an interaction with those animals. So that compassion right from the childhood is deliberately, is produced in the children. Whereas in India, we saw a lot of people, even in zoos, you must have seen that the animals are relaxing, but these people, they want some action. So they will pick up a stone and throw them, hit them with the stone. And they will enjoy the action after that. So looking at our amateur animal art, it is quite, surprising for everybody that leopard doesn't attack. A snake doesn't bite. A bear, which is dangerous in nature. All these so-called dangerous animals, they're so lovely. You have to take a message from them, in fact. There's a lot of violence in human nature. A lot of violence everywhere. I didn't forget to tell you about this tribal population here. There's not a single case of rape in last 47 years. Neither they, in spite of poverty, they rob anybody, or neither they beg for food. It's a very good culture, very simple and very good culture. Community living, whatever problems they have in the community, they try to solve in the village itself. So these are some of the good qualities which even the civilized people can imitate those qualities. So compassion must be developed in the younger generation about animals and about this other world of human. 30% of the people who are living below poverty. Almost 30%, maybe more after the corona. So that compassion should have. They are our brothers, our sisters. We take oath every day in the school. India is my country, and I love my brothers and sisters and all this. So basically, I think that these young generations should visit good projects, NGOs, instead of before joining their career. That is most important thing. Baba had exposed us to the life of tribal, so that I decided to work for them. A simple exposure. They didn't tell me to work. They advised me to do this or that. But this exposure was enough for me to change my life. So this exposure is wherever good institution running the work for the other people, rural India, the tribal people. One must go and visit, at least visit them. Don't not expect anything dramatic change in them. But the impressions which are there in your subconscious mind, that will probably help them to decide in future about their work and career.
What are the daily practices and rituals that you follow that keep you rooted amongst the different work that you do?
Pardon?
What are some of the daily practices and rituals that you follow that kind of keeps you rooted? Uh,
Actually, there are no such practices, you know. Basically, uh, we have we go for a walk. It's beautiful nature every day, morning and evening. Confluence of three rivers. Uh, if you are frustrated by some incident, you know, so instead of reacting right in the project in front of the colleagues, we go for a walk in the nature, in the confluence, and then discuss about the problem, about the frustration, and come back with some solution. Never I ever practiced any yoga that time because we are not at a very younger age. I came here. Neither I. Father said only religion in India or in the world should be humanity, and which we are practicing that, and that is very good. Neither we have any political, you know, background or political bias. That is another advantage that volunteers or the workers from all political parties they come here freely to visit to discuss something. If you have a label of this political party or that political party, probably some of them would not come, hesitate to come. So there is another advantage that if you don't have a political label behind you, more people probably get inspired to come and at least have an interaction with them.
so, the very name of Gandhi brings about a lot of hatred for unknown reasons in
Yeah.
a lot of things today. So, how do you think we could instill the ideas of Gandhi for the coming generations?
Yeah, now that everybody is talking about Gandhi, you know, in spite of hatred with some people, most of the world has recognized his principles. Even in India also, if you leave Gandhi, probably you cannot rule India. So Gandhi and Ambedkar is a must for ruling India. So and after the Corona, probably it has proved that you have to stop having greed. You have to go to the nature. You have to go to the rural area. Development with human face. Baba always used to say, you have big projects. You are displacing a lot of tribals. You are displacing, destroying nature, and you are now suffering with the consequences. So this is a warning everybody should take. Uh, Curtail your needs, which Gandhi said long back. Leading good life is everybody's right, but that doesn't mean that you should have unlimited wealth. Second thing is that you should think about your brothers and sisters who are living in rural area and the tribal area. That is a responsibility of everybody. So I think people living in cities should think about it. So many, as you see in this, crores of people have gone back to their own states and cities from Mumbai, from Pune, and all these things. So we have more development projects around villages about agriculture, about fish culture, about what not, horticulture, small factories, food preservation, watershed management, everything I mean can do in the cities, in the rural areas. So a lot of people are attracted to go back to the government should think of giving facilities to them in rural areas. The only problem over I told about the doctors not going to rural areas. There are two things is that there is tremendous difference in the lifestyle in rural area and cities. If you want to send somebody to the rural areas, those centers should have minimum facilities for the doctors. Good quarter to live them, have a water supply, some facilities for the education, so that they can go there gladly. And compulsory posting, of course, doesn't have any meaning. They don't go willingly there and they don't work there. So I always tell the people, students from the medical colleges, you should go to the rural areas. You will get a different experience, and that will enrich your life forever. The 1 year service, what is there? You don't have any responsibilities. You are bachelor, most of them are. So I comes to a voluntary 1 year service in the rural area or a tribal area. Now after the corona, of course, everybody has to think about saving nature. And that is the most important thing now.
So I'm quoting Baba Amte here. Um, I don't want to be a great leader. I want to be a man who goes around with a little oil can, and when
Okay.
he sees a breakdown, offers his help.
Yeah.
To me, the man who does that is greater than any holy man in saffron colored robes. The mechanic with the oil can. That is my ideal in life. So, how was this instilled in your childhood and as you grew up with him?
As I told you that Baba's vision was, it's a tremendous. He's a visionary. He was a visionary. We both are very simple. And after coming over here, we learned a lot of things. It's not that because of Baba. The inspiration was Baba. But after living with this tribe, we learned a lot of things about tolerance, about satisfaction, about community life, consensus, all the decision by consensus. It's simple things. It's old traditions, which are good. So we learned a lot from them and leading very satisfying life. Another quote, important quote about Baba, somebody asked him, what do you think about Nobel Prize? Mother Teresa got Nobel Prize. Some other people. Now, long back, Baba said, long back, I made the decision. My work is a noble enterprise, so I don't crave for Nobel Prize. It's already a noble enterprise. So that's how he led his life. Never went after any award or prizes or publicity. What he determined in his mind, he carried on.
So, a little bit on Nana Patekar's biopic. Um, is there any particular scene that's close to your heart?
Actually, the way we led life here in this area. Actually, the philosophy of both of us was that we do the work and then just forget about that. There are new challenges always. But when we saw the film, afterwards, it was just remembering the olden days. So rather than what we felt about film, we are really happy what youngsters felt about the film. A tremendous awareness in the younger generation. Though it was in Marathi, but a lot of people saw them. There are some English subtitles in the film. So it went all over the world. And that is because of that we got a lot of invitations and other things. So that is more satisfying for both of us. That without expecting anything, a very simple lifestyle, simple life we led in this life, which is inspiring the younger generation, which we never expected. It's a byproduct of our life.
Is there a reason that the Amte family is always in a white vest?
Baba started, not everybody is in white. Mostly Baba and myself. Yeah. It's very comfortable dress.
So, in line with Mahatma Gandhi's philosophy, Anandwan has become completely self sufficient. So, can you tell us a little bit about the self sufficient campus?
I mean, actually, it's not that. It's very self-sufficient. You can become, in fact, if you have all the facilities in the rural areas. Since Anandwan has grown up, most of the agriculture and vocational training and industries around. But still, you have to feed 2,000 people there. So, little bit we have to depend on donations. And in this area, in Hemalkasa, we have very little land for cultivation or doing some other activities. So, most of the projects are run on voluntary donations. But basically, we are teaching this tribal students, apart from formal education, everything else farming, horticulture, vocational training. So, probably that is because of that, almost 80% of the educated students after completion of education have come back and serving their own community in Gadchiroli district. So, it's a great satisfaction for both of them.
You mentioned that doing surgical procedures for cataracts for a person was a liability in the family and they would die, due to lack of food. Has the condition improved now?
Yeah, with the education, basically with the education. The malnutrition has come down. People started doing farming. Those who are educated, they have got jobs in the same district. So no need to go to the forest to collect these, animals and tubers and roots. But the area which is little bit away from us, Abuj Mar area, where no development has reached. So people still are sometimes they have to go to the forest to kill the animals for food. But around the people around Hemalkasa, let's say 200 kilometers radius probably. So most of them are have become self-sufficient, aware about their about health, about rights, about education, and it started loving the animals instead of killing them and eating them for food. So most of the it has basically our school children, more than 600. They have direct action with interaction with the vegetarian animals. Just from the kitchen, they go to the deer cage, and all the deers they come running. They can feed them with their hand. So this association with animals really has changed their attitude. Before that, they had seen these animals as food. Now all of them started loving the animals. Their parents also started loving them. So hunting around Hemalkasa has come down.
What is your take on experiential learning?
Pardon?
What is your take on experiential learning?
Experience?
Learning through experience. Can you speak a little bit about that?
Learning to?
Through learning through experience, different experiences.
In fact, where we had to do most of the things which were not supposed to do because this was a cut-off area. So when we started this project in 73, every monsoon from June 15 to December, we were totally cut off from the world. So there was some technical problem in my transistor or in my watch. How can I get repaired sending the instrument to the city? Impossible. So with trial and error, we started doing the things. We started with got some equipment from Nagpur to repair the wash, got some equipment for repairing the transistor. Even we started repairing the hand pumps in the area as a public health work. The people used to drink water from the river or nala. When it was flowing, it's all right, but after the monsoon, when it gets stagnant, so there are a lot of problems, waterborne diseases. So I requested government of Maharashtra to have a borewell in every village. So in around 80s, they had borewells in most of the villages, but there was no maintenance team. So only we volunteered. We, as soon as the used to get out of order, the villagers started coming. Doctor sir, our pump is out of order. Please come and repair it. So almost we repaired hand pumps. It's a heavy work in 80 villages around Amalkasa to get them clean water, at least bacteria-free water. So most of the things when you are deficient, so you develop some innovation. That's how I learned most of the things here. You only even in medical problems, gynec problems, orthopedic problems. You see a lot of orthopedic problems were there. People were deficient in calcium, so there are a lot of fracture cases. But how can you diagnose the fracture case without anesthesia? You just see the swelling of the part. So by the time the fracture case came here, I knew their tolerance of pain. So I used to hold the limb, one hand above the swelling and one hand below the, and then turn it away in opposite direction. If there was a fracture, you could feel the friction. And that's how our diagnosis used to get confirmed. And then I used to give him plaster of Paris dressing, and then his limb was saved that way. X-ray came after 22 years. And that made it a little bit easier now. But sending back was perfectly ethical. You know, I'm not an orthopedician, I'm not an ophthalmologist, I'm not a gynecologist, as you do in cities. So they have a lot of people around. But here, when they came with faith, you have come to help them. We couldn't say no to anybody. So that is how, we try to help them in every problem. Medical and then not a medical afterwards.
So this is a question we ask at the end of the session to all the people, which is, can you recommend 5 books that you think all of us should read?
Which one?
Can you recommend 5 books that you think all of us should definitely read?
I didn't understand which one.
Can you recommend 5 books that you think all of us should definitely read in our lifetimes?
I think basically most of the inspiring books are the autobiographies or biographies. At least, our ex-president Abdul Kalam, his book inspired many people. And Baba Amte, of course, his life, though he didn't write autobiography, a lot of books on written on him. I basically read about Dr. Schweitzer, Albert Schweitzer, who worked in Africa. The people who are really miraculous work for the society. The biography is basically for inspiration. I mean, basically. Read many books that way. But these are some of the books, you can get some insight apart from inspiration.
So, thank you so much, Prakashji. I think listening to your journey and the kind of immense work that you've done has definitely been an inspiration for all of us. It's a lot that has been learned. Um, so, to Tari's mother, Akhila Kannadasan, who's a writer at The Hindu, and Soundarya, who's a student of architecture from Auroville. They both have been a great support for the Cuckoo movement, and we take this opportunity to wish them and everyone else who shares their birthday on this beautiful day. So happy birthday! And I would like to thank you once again. And this is something we tell everybody who has participated at the end of the session, which is to definitely write about the session as soon as it gets over. This is just, it could be just for yourself. You could share it on social media or share it with your friends, your families. But it definitely serves as a kind of document many years later. Also, at some point, you definitely will come back to it. Maybe just one line that stays with you. So, also, this is the the last continuous session that we'll be having from now on. The Coco Conversations will be taking place on a weekly basis. We've had about 50 so far. And again, Prakash, I think it was just a real blessing to have you come and speak to us and
Thank
also
you. Thank
inaugurate the veterinary clinic at the beginning of the session. I think we'll hold that very dearly. So thank you so much.
you.